Risa Groux, welcome to the Biohacking Secrets Show.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
I'm excited to chat, and especially because of how many people today are dealing with autoimmune conditions and looking for, there's a lot of misinformation out there around detoxification. So I'm excited for us to get into the nitty gritty and what you're seeing work in your practice and talk about your new book, Food Frame. But for our listeners who may not be as familiar with your work, maybe you could give us a little bit of your backstory and your origin story, if you will.
Yeah. So I've always been passionate about nutrition. I don't know why. It just was always interesting to me. And, I felt like everybody in my house was always on a diet. And I was always fascinated, like, why are you on a diet? And why, and why do we gain weight? And why do we lose weight? And why do we, why are diets restrictive? And, just the relationship with food always fascinated me. Right. And there was always people trying to feed me my whole life. And, growing up in a Jewish home, it was just always a lot of food. It's all about the food. Yeah. So, I was fascinated my whole life. And then after college, I went into public accounting and realized in about 10 minutes that wasn't my my path. And so I ended up in sports marketing, and I did a lot of sponsorships for a lot of NFL and the Rams and the Ducks. And then
I could see you doing well with that.
It was fun. It was super fun. I had a great time, and you're entertaining and going to games. It was super fun. But every spare minute I had, I was reading books on nutrition. And
were you dealing with something yourself at the time that had you so curious about it?
Not at the time, but shortly thereafter, after we got married and I had my first child, we were able to conceive right away. And then when we tried to for the second baby, I had major fertility issues. So I started really getting deep in that. And I went to a fertility specialist who tested me and said, "Oh, you've got a thyroid issue." And so he said, "Here's a script. You're going to take this medication." I said, "Well, for how long?" And he said, "Every day." And I said, No. For how long do I take this? And he said, "Oh, forever." And I don't know what it was about that, but I left that office and I went, why would I be taking something synthetic that my body's supposed to produce naturally? I just didn't understand that. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started doing the deep dive. And then I did everything. I did herbs, I did acupuncture, I did all these things. And eventually I was able to conceive, but I did testing. I found out I had this gene mutation that's very, very common. 90% of the population has it, called MTHFR.
Hey, I got that too. High five.
Yeah. Everybody has it, right? Almost everybody, right? And so one of the side effects of MTHFR, if it's not treated with the right B vitamins, is infertility. So nobody had tested me along the way. So I did a lot of research and a lot of testing and exploring. And so after I had my second baby, I was diagnosed shortly thereafter with Hashimoto's, which is now hypothyroid, but now you're in the state of attack. So your antibodies are attacking my thyroid gland, in this case of Hashimoto's.
Yeah.
And again, I went to a naturopathic doctor who basically didn't tell me much. They didn't give me any restrictions as far as food or lifestyle or anything. Just take this pill. And it was a pill for an L. And at that time, I was starting to go through nutrition school.
What did they put you on, like Synthroid or?
Synthroid, exactly, which is the major number one drug of choice for anybody with hypothyroid, or it's also the generic is levothyroxine.
Yeah, and also synthetic.
Exactly. So it's a synthetic T4, and T4s are inactive thyroid hormone. Yeah. And T4 needs to convert to T3. And that conversion is really important because that T3, or active thyroid hormone, which determines everything, is only 7% of the equation. Our T4 is 93%. So most doctors will just test you for T4 and TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone that's created by your pituitary. So they don't even look at the end result. And
if your doctor's doing that, just find another doctor.
Exactly. You need all 9 markers of your thyroid to find out, are you reversing it from your cortisol?
Exactly.
Your uptake, your estrogen, is your estrogen competing for that thyroid site? So there's so many factors in the thyroid, and it's not about the T4, because they're giving you the T4 and they're crossing their fingers going, I hope it converts. But I see labs all day long, and most people don't convert. Every now and then, rare, I'll find somebody who converts. But most of us need a T3 or a glandular that comes from a cow or a pig that has both T4 and T3. So you don't have to hope for that conversion.
Yeah. Are you more of a fan of like Armour thyroid or WP thyroid as opposed to Synthroid, or what's your perspective on that?
So I will tell you that I've been on a myriad of medication, and both mostly natural, but sometimes either you can't have it, you can't get it, they're unable to procure the raw materials, so it's unavailable, which happened to me. I was on WP for a really long time. It worked for me amazingly, and then they stopped making it. Yeah. And so I had to switch. And so I went to Thyroid, and then that wasn't working because that's all, and they turned out that they didn't have the potency in that medication.
I found the exact same thing. I loved WP.
Yeah, WP was great. And I would go back to it any second, but I'm just not sure because it goes in and out of production, and I can't afford to do that. And then Armor is my third choice, but Armor actually is very effective for some people. It just has more fillers in it. So it has corn and maltodextrin and things that I don't really love. But it does tend to work for a lot of people. WP, it has the least amount of variance, so that's why it's so effective. And then some people do well with synthetics, and some people do well with compounded, and some people do well with a blend of both. So, so it really is so depending on what your personal situation is.
Yeah,
and it doesn't always work forever. So you always have to have it checked, because sometimes it'll just stop working.
So that's huge what you just said. So basically, like your top three are number one, WP Thyroid, Nature Thyroid, and then Armor Thyroid. And then from there, sometimes you'll do specific compounding and other combinations with synthetics like Synthroid, if it makes sense. And you're looking at, when you're working with someone, you're looking at, you mentioned 9 biomarkers of the thyroid, and I'm going to have you kind of fill in the gaps, because I always order, free T3, reverse T3, T4, TSH, thyroid antibodies. I'll look at ratios like the reverse T3 to free T3 ratio, making sure that's under 5. So on and so forth. What else are you looking for, and what do you consider really important to know that the thyroid and that conversion process from T4 to T3 is happening effectively and efficiently?
You are on it, Anthony. I love all those things that you just said, because most people don't even know all that. But it basically starts in the pituitary. The pituitary is the size and shape of a pea, and it's in the brain. And that's what starts it. It releases what's called TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. That goes through the liver. This is why I'm all big about detoxing, because if the liver is congested and not functioning well, we're going to have a really hard time making that into T4. But it goes through the liver and we create T4. T4s are inactive thyroid hormone, as I mentioned. And then we convert to T3. So when we look at hormones of any kind, we're always looking at free and total. So it's not just enough to get a total T4. You have to get the free and total. Free means it's unbound to proteins. That's what's usable to the body. And then total is a number that's a sum of what's free and what's bound to proteins. Not usable, but great for guidance. So I order the TSH, the free T3, the total T3, the free T4, the total T4. I do the reverse T3, which is where cortisol, our stress hormone, if we have a lot of stress or we have cortisol imbalance, we're going to start reversing that T3. So you might be converting great, but you're pulling from that available source. And then the other one is T3 uptake, as you mentioned. That is where estrogen or testosterone or sex hormones can compete for that thyroid site. And if it's winning out, people who are estrogen dominant, I see this all the time. Anybody on birth control pills, I see this. Anybody who is, taking estrogen, you always have to get your hormones checked, because you just don't want a surplus of that. And that can affect your thyroid big time. And then I look at thyroid globulin antibodies, and then I look at TPO, thyroid peroxidase antibodies. So those are the 9 markers that I look at. And when I'm assessing a thyroid, when I get labs, I'm looking, are we having a production issue? Are we having a processing issue? Are we having a conversion issue? And then are there anything competing for that thyroid, the reverse or the T3 uptake? And lastly, we're looking at antibodies. So every case seems to be completely individual and different. So, and there's different drivers for that. And so everybody should be treated individually.
For sure. If we were in person, I'd give you the knucks right now. You crushed that.
That's awesome.
Okay. So you reminded me of another question, which is on the T3 side. So a lot of fitness competitors and bodybuilders will take Cytomel, the synthetic T3. And some people take that as an adjunctive therapy along with like pork desiccated thyroid or synthroid or whatever. Do you use Cytomel or T3? And what are your thoughts on that?
So I don't prescribe at all, but I work with doctors who do, and I work with people with their doctors. And so, yes, I will do anything it takes to get your free T3 good, within normal range, definitely above 3.0, because people tend to feel crappy below 3.0.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do anything it takes. And I have a lot of supplement support that I do. I have an Thyroid supplement that I use in my office to help with function and conversion. And, certain people need more selenium and zinc and the minerals that help with that conversion. So, and we do it through food. So if you're coming in my office and you're just living on gluten and dairy and soy, I'm going to pull all those off of you. We may see a move in the right direction on your labs just from that diet change.
That's huge. Just to mention the fact that like people who are inflamed, whether that's through diet or through toxins or a variety of things, even their environment, they don't convert well. Like inflammation kills conversion of hormones.
Exactly. That's why I detox every single person I work with pretty much, unless they're super, super sick, but I'll go slowly, but I detox everybody because I just had a patient yesterday come in who, had all these itchy skin all over the place and having all this breakout in the face in 1 week on my detox. All of it is gone. She's been to every doctor, every allergist. They can't, they give her all these topical creams. It's an inside job.
She was eating stuff that she was allergic to.
She didn't know, but then she did an allergy test. She pulled those foods and she was still having itching. And so it was either a compounding amount of toxins that were living in her liver that she wasn't able to process, or it was an allergy that she didn't show up for. She did an IgE panel. I do IgG panels. Those are the panels that if you have leaky gut, my guess is she has some leaky gut because usually skin issues are involved with leaky gut. She's got those gaping holes in her intestinal lining because then we only have one layer of epithelial cells there. So when you have those holes, these proteins are going through and they're causing an antibody production, right? You're in the state of inflammation. You might feel fine when you eat that almond butter,
or you're just used to feeling like garbage.
Or you're used to it. Exactly.
I always feel like this.
Right. Which
doesn't affect me.
Yeah. Amazing. Right.
Okay. So that's great. Do you do your testing through Cyrex labs?
I do some Cyrex, but I do all my blood work through LabCorp. And then I do a stool test. Everybody who I work with in my office gets a stool test to do.
Really?
Because there's so much in the stool, so much.
You looking for parasites?
I'm looking for parasites, worms, any pathogens. There's a lot of pathogens that can cause Hashimoto's.
Yeah.
So a parasite called Blastocystis hominis is a precursor, can be for Hashis. Yersinia, H. pylori is a big one. Tons of people have H. pylori, and H. pylori is dangerous. It does not do a body well. So, and it becomes very asymptomatic. In the stool test, I also see what's your digestion, your enzyme production. Are you having a fat malabsorption? What's your calprotectin, your inflammation in your intestinal lining, your secretory IgA? It tells me how many troops you have in your gut, because 75 to 85% of our immune system is produced in our gut. So it kind of gives me a count, how is your immune system doing? So I get a lot of information. I test for anti-gliadin, right? So the antibody to gluten, gliadin being the protein in gluten. So I have a really good assessment. I have a good roadmap when I get your tests in. And if I need to test more, I do. But I typically start with those two tests, and most of the time that's enough. And then we go from there. So, I always say I'm not really good at playing darts with the lights off and I can't see the target. I just am not good. I'm guessing. It's not a good thing for anybody. But when the lights are on and I can see the target, I know exactly where I'm aiming, right?
Exactly. And then it gives you more conviction to stay with the course of action rather than like, I'm going to try something else because I'm not sure if,
Exactly. It's data.
Exactly.
See the data. I see inflammation markers. I see, the liver enzymes. I see everything.
You had mentioned you like the T3 above 3.0. What are like 1, 2, 3 other like key markers that you're like, we need to be hitting this on your blood labs to know, in addition to you feeling well and, body weight regulation being on point, this is where I want to see you. Yeah.
So ideally, we like it between 3.5 and 4.0 for the free T3. So most people are not there. Some people do get there, but it also goes down in age. So I prefer anybody. I'm really aiming towards anybody being over 3.0 on free T3.
Okay. So that's the floor, but you prefer 3.5 to 4.0.
Correct.
Now, if you test like a healthy teenager, are they going to be in that 3.5 to 4.0 range?
Easily, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Healthy,
cool.
Yes. If their thyroid's working, for sure.
Okay.
Those are the people who can eat anything they want. They're burning. Their metabolism is working. Their temperature gauge is working. They're not having growth issues. They're doing great.
Okay. Awesome. That makes sense. Any other markers that you try to hit, or are you focused all on free T3?
No, I really want that reverse T3 to be below like 15, 14, 13, 12. I deal with a lot of people with so much stress, and that reverse T3 is very difficult. We work really hard on the adrenal glands, exercise, meditation, Epsom salt baths, sleep. Sleep is huge. I can't tell you how many people don't sleep. So that's a big factor in reverse T3. That's important. And then the T3 uptake is a really big deal because there's so many women that are estrogen dominant.
Yes.
And men too, if they have high blood sugars, they're doing what we call aromatization, which is they take their excess testosterone and they convert it into estrogen, right? That's how we get man boobs and things. And that will affect their thyroid. So blood sugar is another really big thing that I focus on.
Love it. Love it. You'd mentioned fat malabsorption as something that you're looking for with a lot of testing. When that comes up, I mean, are you in the camp of let's get them some ox bile and allow that to help? Or are you saying we got to really detox some of the stuff that's backed up in your liver and your digestive system first? Or are you like, let's do both? Or do you have a different approach? I'm kind of curious.
So everybody's individual in my office, right? Because everybody is different. So I don't know what the circumstances are, but if you've had your gallbladder removed, I'm going to give you some
huge point. Yeah. If anyone listening who's had their gallbladder removed needs help with fat absorption and digestion and assimilation, great point. Yeah.
Because our liver produces bile that helps us metabolize that fat. And when we remove that storage unit, that gallbladder that just sits there right under the liver, just holds it. It's a storage unit. Then the liver stops to produce as much. And when it does produce, it floods the body and it gets sludgy and coagulated. So, beets are great food to decoagulate bile, but it's also high in sugar. So I wouldn't say eat them all day long.
Yeah, it depends.
Bile acids are going to be very, very helpful. I have a digestive enzyme that I make that I take every single day that most people, if you're above 40 or 50 and you're having symptoms or without symptoms, you're going to be on my enzymes because as we age, we produce less and less.
What's that called?
It's called Enzyme Max, and it has all your pancreatic enzymes. It has hydrochloric acid to digest your proteins and ox bile for fat malabsorption.
Do you sell that on your website?
I do. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you sell that OptiThyroid on your website?
I do. Yeah.
You do? All right. Sweet. Yeah. So, okay. Beautiful.
All my products are on there, and I'm really picky. All my products are good. There's no gluten, dairy, soy. They're quality products. I take them. My kids take them, and I'm super picky about what I put into my body.
Beautiful. And so all that's at risagroupnutrition.com.
Exactly.
All right. And we'll link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
We kind of touched on leaky gut a little bit and how that can contribute to so many of these inflammatory conditions and hormone imbalances. I was curious, the past few years, I would say from like 2016 on, because of certain relationships with colleagues and people that have brought my attention to this, I've done a deep dive on radiation and how that affects us specifically. It's electrical radiation, but all the wireless electricity in our world. And I've seen some incredible studies on what that does to degrading the gut barrier and contributing to intestinal permeability, what it does to the blood-brain barrier, which kind of opens up our brain to toxins and things like that. And for a lot of people, it also really jacks up their sleep, which if you're not sleeping well, that's going to cause this cascade of hormonal imbalances and inflammation. And you're working out, but you're sore all the time because you're not recovering and that sort of thing. Is that something that you address? Have you looked into it at all?
You know, you hit on this a bit earlier, and that, inflammation can come um, from a lot of sources, right?
Yeah.
Systemic inflammation and gut health are the two main foundational issues that I focus on with everybody.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we know that disease lives in an inflamed state, right? Yep. We now know that with COVID, the people who were dying were in third stage inflammation. So I'm trying to quell that inflammation. The other is gut health, because everything has to do with the gut. So you can get, stress is a big source of inflammation, right? So we have work, family, relationship, food stress, environmental stress is huge. So if you're working in a building and you're having radiation and you've got paint and you've got, mold, you've got all these things that are and then you're slathering yourself with some sunscreen, and then, you're putting nail polish on, and you're dyeing your hair, and you're putting deodorant, mainstream deodorant in, and you've got crap in your shampoos. I mean, the average American female comes in contact with over 200 toxins just before she's left the bathroom. You think about the makeup and and then forget the things we're injecting in the face and the hair and all these chemicals. We are on chemical overload. So that's going to absolutely create inflammation, and it's going to eat that intestinal lining for sure and cause leaky gut.
They're literally at every turn.
Yeah, they're every.
And yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that too. One of my friends just went to Mexico on Monday, and she messaged me and she's like, "All right, what's your take on sunscreen?" And I'm like, "Haven't touched this stuff in over a decade." And I'm like, if I'm going to burn, I get out of the sun or I put on some clothes. And she's like, "That's what I was saying." She's like, "My friend is so in deep with it. She's slathering it all over her body all day." And I'm like, you do not want that stuff going into your body through your largest organ,
And just to give you a current statistic, the FDA has approved 86,000 chemicals for us to use, 86,000. So we're about 2,000 a year, regardless of who's in the White House. It just keeps getting done.
Just looking out for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Wink, wink.
So, yeah, you have to be your own advocate. And the crazy thing, Anthony, this is the crazy thing to me, is most of these aren't even tested. Right? No. So it's a handshake, it's a meal in Washington, D.C. or wherever it is, and then it's done. I mean, it's insanity. Over 3,000 of those chemicals we can eat. Like
we'll give you a little bit of our company with no liability. How's that sound?
Exactly.
Push it through.
Just drive up our margins. And no other country on the planet has as many as we do.
Yes.
None.
We are living in what I lovingly refer to as the great poisoning. And people, a lot of our listeners, fortunately, those of you guys that are hanging out, like, you get it, and you're hopefully implementing this stuff in your life. But a lot of people that just rely on the boob tube and believe everything coming out of that box, I have to imagine that it's going to affect lifespan and certainly health span.
For sure. Yeah. And I have to tell you, I have a massive amount of teenagers that come into my office with major anxiety. And when I was a teenager, I didn't even know what anxiety was. Mm-hmm. There is so much anxiety, and they order up this food and they're living on these inflammatory oils day in and day out. And then we've got the electronics, and it's sad to me, and we have to teach the next generation to eat real food, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a manufactured storm of that contributes to imbalances psychologically, physically, emotionally. Let's talk a little bit about nutrition, because everyone's eating, right? Everyone's got to eat no matter what. Yeah. And I'd love your thoughts on how do we bring the body back into balance, and what are some of the recommendations that you would give our listeners, or what you would take our listeners through if they were a client, that sort of thing?
So what I say to everybody who I work with for the very first time is, I want you to imagine that your body is just like a sneaker factory, right? It might look like the Nike factory. You've got all the equipment to make a sneaker. So I know if I give you some leather or rubber or canvas, we're going to get a sneaker at the end, right? It may change in shape or size or color, but it'll be a sneaker. Mm-hmm. And if I say to you, Anthony, I've got this great idea, let's put some cell phone parts in your sneaker factory, what would you say to me?
It's not what we do.
Right. And what would happen if we did that? What would happen if we put cell phone parts in that sneaker factory?
I mean, they'd probably sit around and not nothing much would happen with them.
We'd break that machinery is what we would do, right?
Oh,
We would break it. I mean, if we went to Nike and they'd say, no, you can't put that in there. We've got millions of dollars worth of equipment. And so I give that silly little example because I think it's a good visual. We have this body that was built to have fuel, just like your car is built to have fuel. And so we need to put the parts in there that make it work. Right? Leather, rubber, and canvas into our machinery. So those are things that are crawling on the ground and sprouting from the earth, right?
Yeah.
There are things that don't really have a nutrition label.
Maybe swimming somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. All of those things that nature has provided for us. It's not, something that with red dye number 4 or things that are in a package that will live on a shelf for 3 years or 10 years. That's not what we're made to do. Now, I say to people all the time, eat more for survival and less for sport. So now we're all going to eat for sport. I hope I always do because I love my chips and guac, or I love a gluten-free pizza from time to time. But 99% of the time, I eat foods that my machine knows what to do with them. Because when we're putting...
So you never just go full out like Lou Malnati's deep dish pizza. Like you're not going to even mess with the gluten no matter what, even if it's a cheat day.
The only time I'll eat gluten is when I'm in Italy. It's a different kind of gluten.
It is.
Yeah.
I lived there for 5 months and I was eating tons of pasta, bread, drinking wine, and I didn't get morbidly obese until like near the end. It was no, my friend and I seriously, we were both, so we played soccer at the University of Illinois and we were both there. So we weren't playing soccer. We were admittedly drinking too much wine and having too much fun. But we'd like lift up our shirts and we'd be like, are we getting fat? And we'd be like, we were both getting fat together. So we're like, no, we look about the same. And then we got home and our girlfriends were like, oh my God, you guys got so fat. But it took months of us eating in a way where we would have been obese in the US in like a week.
Exactly.
It's different. What's up with that?
Because they don't have chemicals and their soil is very different than ours. So their gluten is very different than ours.
We need new regulatory agencies, or we need to disband these ones. And
our soil is really a very much part of the root cause of all this because our soils are depleted. They're about 40% less nutrient dense than they were in the 1950s.
Yeah. Maybe Monsanto could fix that.
You think?
Let's get them on the horn.
That's the problem.
All right. So you'll go with gluten when you're in Italy. All right. This is making sense. So continue talking about nutrition. You're saying the occasional gluten.
So if we keep that premise, and I wrote my book Food Frame because I work with so many people and everybody is different, right? Your lab looks different than your best friend or your brother or whoever it is. And so I believe that there isn't one diet fits all, that these books that come out that are great are really great for some people, but they're not great for everybody. You have that friend who did keto and lost 40 pounds and you're like, I gained 2 pounds. So if you have a fat malabsorption and sure you don't have a gallbladder, that is not going to be good for you. Right.
Right.
So there's all these different, so I'd say we should be eating according to our health status, but for the most part, everybody should be eating clean protein. So that's grass-fed, grass-finished beef. That's pastured chicken. That is wild fish, as best as you can, right? And then vegetables, 60 to 80% of our plate should be living organisms, living plants. They could be cooked, but vegetables, real vegetables. And then sweet potato and yams are great carbohydrates for us. And fats, good fats are really, really important. How much fat you have depends on your fat malabsorption, or do you have a gallbladder, things like that. But those are the foods that we should be sustaining ourselves on. Now, legumes are okay, not for everybody. They're a great source of polyphenols. They're a great source of fiber, good protein, plant-based protein, but they're jacked with carbohydrates. So I'm a former vegan, and I just kept seeing my blood sugars rise and rise and rise after all the garbanzo beans and the black beans I was doing, and the hummus I was eating.
Do you wear one of those 24-hour glucose monitors?
No.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
But they're all the rage right now.
Yeah. So
I'm drawing a line on the wearables. I'm not going to be plugged into the Internet of Things.
Yeah, we have to live life, and then that's going to cause some stress and some anxiety around food. And I want people to have a good relationship with food.
And with legumes, you got to cook a lot of those anti-nutrients out of them, which sometimes takes a while. You're soaking them, you're putting them in a slow cooker. It's not just like dump them out of the can and eat them, or else a lot of people ain't going to do well with that.
Exactly. Eden Foods, I think, has, from the last I knew, their canned are all pressure cooked. So,
nice. Really?
Yeah,
that's a
brand I know that does that.
Eden
But
Foods?
I still think if you don't have digestive enzymes in which to break down those lectins or phytates, then you're going to have a really tough time. You're going to get bloated or heartburn, things like that. And of course, if you have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, I would not recommend those for you at all.
Yeah, you'll probably know because they'll make you farty.
Exactly. Farty and bloaty.
Farty and bloaty.
Yeah.
Okay, so 60 to 70% of what you're eating, veggies, right? And maybe some fruits, depending on where blood sugar is at. A lot of people have a hard time translating that into meals or what to cook up. And I'm curious, Risa, in your household, what are some of your go-to ways of making veggies delicious so that you eat a lot of them?
Oh gosh, I have so many ways. So it's in my book. It's on my website, on my Instagram.
And your book is Food Frame.
Food Frame.
And it's available at Amazon and your website.
And Barnes & Noble as well.
And Barnes & Noble. And it's endorsed by a lot of big names like Stephen Gundry, Josh Axe. You mentioned a few other.
Suzanne Summers and JJ Virgin. Yeah.
Oh, you probably would have also been a great publicist, I would imagine.
Oh, well, thank you. I love what I do, and I've been fortunate enough to meet some really incredible people. I've had amazing mentors, and, it's our job to get the word out that you can reverse your health. You can take control of your health, and thrive. So, so I do a ton of cooking. I love to cook. Vegetables are always a part of everything. I make big salads a lot, but I do lately I've been on this kick with stir fry with miracle noodles. I don't know if you're familiar with their konjac flour. Are you familiar?
Yeah, I've heard of them. I have not.
They're so great. Yeah.
Okay. So miracle noodles and their konjac flour.
Yeah.
What's konjac?
It's a sweet potato. It's a yam noodle.
Okay.
So it really has no nutrients in it, except for it has 1 gram of fiber, but there's no protein, no carbohydrates. So it's really what I call a free food. And so I do that when I get home from work sometimes, and I'll throw in a ton of veggies. If I've got spinach and kale or bok choy, I do a lot of baby bok choy, onions, mushrooms, red cabbage. I do that, and I'll throw that in with some toasted sesame oil.
Ooh.
And then I'll do a protein in there if I have shrimp or chicken or whatever I have. And then I do some almond butter. I have my sesame ginger dressing, which is amazing. Some fresh ginger or ground ginger, and coconut aminos, which is a substitute for soy.
Yeah. Shout out to Brad.
Delicious. Yeah. And then I throw in some, at the end, some black and white toasted sesame seeds, and it's delicious. And you're having 3 or 4 carbohydrates, depending on what, vegetables you put in there. You're full. You feel like you're having some noodles, which I love a little noodles every now and then.
Yeah, me too.
And then you're going to bed totally digested. It's super easy to digest it. And you're not carrying this heavy load that you would if you had pasta.
That sounds great. Are you using like a legit wok?
No, I just put it in my saucepan.
In your saucepan. All right. So this is very accessible. And is that a recipe that's in your book?
It is. Oh, no, actually, it isn't. Actually.
It is. All right. So bonus.
Yeah, I really have to do that. I don't think I have it on my website, but I'll do that.
Yeah, that one sounds great. All right. I love it. Any other tips or, I do find that many people, I think salads is a great one.
It's soups. Soups are huge.
Yeah. Okay. So do you do like a Vitamix or a blender where you throw stuff in? Like, what's kind of your process for soup that's easy but also nutritious?
So I do a lot of hand blending. I'll do the hand emulsifier and I just blend it. I do a vegetable soup from time to time. I make a chicken noodle soup, and I'll put in my mandolin, zucchini, and parsnips and carrots. So you feel like you're having some noodles. They look like noodles. They feel like noodles. And that's a great way to get it in. I do a chili, my paleo chili. I have tons of zucchini and yellow summer squash and peppers and things like that. You can throw in tons of veggies in a chili. You won't even notice it. Instead of the beans, I do chili. I do veggies.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of shakes.
Yeah.
I have a collagen shake at least once a day. Pretty much every day. I've been doing that for over 20 years and I never get sick of it. And my shake this morning, I had 2 huge heaping handfuls of spinach, but a lot of times I'll do flaxseed or chia seed or hemp seed or a combination of them because I love to get the omegas as well as the fiber. But shakes are a great way to squeeze in greens. Sometimes I'll do frozen cauliflower rice and you can throw that in. I do a lot of avocado in my shakes, things like that. I do tahini. I'm always creating different shakes.
I like it. So a lot of shakes, stir fry, salads. You've got your special chili, soups, the cauliflower rice as opposed to the traditional rice. These are some good tips.
Yeah, and roasted veggies. I'll make a huge tray of roasted veggies and I'll salad. I'll use them as sides, and it's great.
How do you do roasted veggies? My brother and his wife do that all the time, and I benefit from it, but I don't know what's going on there.
It's great. It takes a little prep time, but you can throw garlic cloves in there and mushrooms, and I do Brussels sprouts. I do a lot of cauliflower. You can throw in broccoli and cauliflower and the cruciferous vegetables. I do beets. I'll do little tiny cubes of beets because it makes it a little sweet.
Sweet and savory.
And then you could do yams or you could do butternut squash. And I make it different every single time. And then I just roast it. And it really just needs just a touch of olive oil and sea salt and you're good to go.
That's it. Olive oil and sea salt.
That's it.
Keep it simple.
Olive oil and sea salt. Yeah.
Nice. And when you're ordering or picking up, are you an order groceries or pick up groceries?
I gotta see and touch my food. Yeah.
Yeah. I know. And I feel like they don't care what they throw in the bag when you have them get it for you.
Yeah,
so you go there and you pick up.
So I get creative at the market. Oh, let me make this. And if this is in or this is in season, I want to see it and I want to create it and all that stuff.
Were you always like that?
I think so. Yeah. I think I've always liked to cook. And I always like to know what's going in my body. And I go to some amazing restaurants, but at all these amazing restaurants, you find out what kind of oil they're using. And that's usually always some form of canola oil or a blend. Yeah. And I don't want to not ever go out, but I like to cook at home and know what I'm eating.
We're kind of at a point right now where if you really care about your health, you're kind of cautious about restaurants.
Yeah.
And I think we can move through this, but we need more health conscious people opening restaurants. Mm-hmm. And whether that's, doctors, health practitioners, biohackers, like just people that are dialed in and are willing to look at it from top to bottom. Because it's like, it's in everything. It's in the salad dressings. You know what I mean? It's hard to go out and get a salad with, unless you're just, I can eat olive oil and vinegar on a salad at home,
right? or bring it with you, which I do sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. What do you feel is driving, because autoimmune issues are more popular today than ever before. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious your thoughts on what's driving that.
So I'll give you the list of what the root causes are of autoimmunity, which I could not find anywhere when I was first diagnosed. Mm-hmm. And by the way, just to let you know, I'm about 10 points away. I'm going to do my labs momentarily, but I'm about 10 points away, at least I was in my last lab, from reversing my Hashimoto's.
Hey, nice job.
Yeah. So it's really, really exciting. I started at 1400 on my TPO and now I'm at 44. So it can be done. So yes, unfortunately, autoimmunity in all kinds we're gaining population. Affects a lot of autoimmune affects women, but men are for sure affected by it too. And we're growing rapidly. And the reasons these are the root causes of them. 1/3 of autoimmune disease is genetics. So if your parent has an autoimmune, you have a third chance of likelihood of getting one yourself. The second biggest chunk of that list is leaky gut, intestinal permeability, which we talked about. So I am always trying to heal that gut. So collagen is grout for leaky gut, bone broth, all the amino acids. I have a product called Gut Reboot, which I use in my shake every single day, that has L-glutamine and slippery elm and marshmallow root and sweet carnosine that helps. I call it grout for leaky gut all the time because we're trying to fill those holes. So leaky gut is a huge one, and people don't realize it. And as you mentioned earlier, people live day to day not feeling well because they just don't. It's just so prevalent for them that they don't even realize what it would feel like to not feel like crap. So I'm just amazed at how people will just live marginally for their life. And so those are the two big ones. Then we have other things, the pathogens, which I had mentioned. There's, when I test my stool test, there is a whole section that says autoimmune potential triggers, right? So these are things that could trigger autoimmunity. So, for instance, I've worked with a lot of rheumatoid arthritis patients. I've never had one rheumatoid arthritis patient that wasn't high flagged for Prevotella species. So that's a pathogen that's in the gut. So
is that a bacteria?
It's a pathogen, yeah.
Yeah.
So those are, bacteria, pathogens, those are really critical for autoimmune. Lack of vitamin D can spawn an autoimmune disease. So vitamin D is critically important. I see so many labs from doctors and they don't even test vitamin D. And the ranges are usually a little lower. In functional medicine, we like them between 80 and 100. And, on most labs will be between 30 and 60, but those move. And then we see MTHFR, right? That gene mutation we talked about, where you have that inability to process or methylize your B12 and or your folate. And that can cause it as well. And then there's some underlying viruses like Epstein-Barr virus. So many people live with Epstein-Barr virus. I test for it all the time. And it can cause blood sugar dysregulation, thyroid dysregulation, and up to 33 autoimmune diseases. So I'm always looking at root causes. And so I went through that list when I was going through my discovery of Hashimoto's. I'm thinking, well, how did I get this? I want to know the why. And I went through that list. And I basically had everything on the list.
Yeah, nice. I had a similar experience. I mean, I've had Lyme disease twice now.
Wow.
And I mean, my world was rocked by Lyme and Bartonella. And those stealth infections. I mean, for a year, I was seeing doctors trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And then we finally figured out what it was. And then, then you got to kind of fix it. And then back in October 2020, our whole family got bit by ticks again. And you know what I mean? So I also understand how much that can throw you off. It's like in a short matter of time, you feel like a completely different person. And it's like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost like you got kryptonite under your bed if you're Superman,
Right.
And you're waking up every morning like, God, why am I always tired even if I sleep, Right. Okay, cool. And I'm going to speak a little bit in code, but I think you and our listeners will do just fine with it. There are, I've received every inoculation that is recommended as a part of the schedule, with the exception of the most recent one, and never really crossed my mind or anything like that. But then when I started looking back, and I particularly had a woman that worked with me, and her child went from being like a healthy 2-year-old girl to basically being autistic after that. And I started looking at like, wow, okay, in like 1983, there were like 25 of these things that were required. And then all of a sudden you go to 2016 and now there's like 75 for the same little human baby. Right. Have you considered that as a potential root cause that could be contributing to autoimmunity, or not on the radar?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I know it's a sensitive topic and I'm speaking in code, but I think everyone gets it.
I wouldn't rule it out. I've never really put that together, but I wouldn't rule it out. Mercury is one other thing on the list that I didn't mention.
Which is in a lot of them as thimerosal.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. Is so that wouldn't be but they don't use thimerosal anymore, but they used to, stabilizer that is just filled with mercury. So yeah, do I think that could spawn it? Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a little tiny baby, 10 pounds, and you're getting pumped with this stuff for sure. And then there's no regulation on, they'll give you 3 shots in one sitting.
Yeah.
I never did that with my kids because I just thought that's just, and I remember the nurse goes, well, you're going to have to come back and pay for a visit. I go, that's okay. I'll do that.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. I know I'm thinking about when I have children, how I'm going to handle all of that. But yeah, a lot of them do, or at least have contained mercury, aluminum in different forms. And like whatever the reason that's attributed to it, we're talking about the same stuff. Mm-hmm. And do you ever do heavy metal testing with clients? Yeah. To see if they're high in those and need to be chelated.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm pretty thorough in my testing. I'm always looking for why. What are the roots?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not, we don't have high cholesterol because we have a deficiency in statins. I know that, right?
Yeah.
Anxiety or depression because we have a deficiency in Zoloft, right?
Yeah.
So I'm always getting to the root cause of why this is.
Which sort of, I think we've covered a good amount of like the drivers of disease. Was there anything else that you wanted to add with regard to the benefits of detoxification and like why people should be doing it regularly? What are some of you mentioned like Epsom salt baths, which I love. And I always feel great when I'm consistently doing those. I'll even throw in some food grade hydrogen peroxide and maybe a little bit of baking soda and that sort of thing. Make a night of it. What are some other practices that you love for cleaning out the body and bringing it back into optimal performance?
Sleep is huge. I know we talked about that. That's really, really, really critical for balance and homeostasis. Water is really good. Really clean water, not tap water, but really good clean water. Spring water.
If anyone listening to this is drinking tap water, just stop. What do you clean your water with?
What do I clean my water with?
I phrased that weird. Do you filter your water? How do you filter your water? Do you buy bottled water?
Right. It's true. And filtered water is not what I would recommend.
Sorry, I occasionally slip into autism myself.
No, that's great. I'm going to use that. I like that. And it's unfortunate we have to clean our water,
Yeah.
Crazy. So, so water is a huge one. And then just liver cleansing foods. I mean, artichokes are really high in liver cleansing properties, but just doing a detox. I mean, think about if you lived in a house for however many years, 50 years or 40 years, and you kept putting boxes in there and you finally couldn't, park your car in the garage. I mean, you have to clean out the garage every now and then. So we don't do that. We don't clean out our bodies, and we're being inundated with these toxins. And, the patient that I just referred to earlier, who was having all these skin issues, I didn't even give her anything but the detox. I gave her some digestive enzymes and B and D vitamins that I give everybody. But in 1 week, all her itching went away. All her face breakouts went away just because we detoxed her liver and we put a hold on some of the foods, the sugars that she was eating. Yeah. So, amazing, right? So
yeah, that's
the liver is critical. It's just critically important.
And just, what I've also noticed is there's like, we're balancing as ambassadors of health. Most of the time we're pretty extreme and we're trying to reach people. So we want to like make it seem doable and achievable. It's like, come on, do this. It's like, it's really going to help you. And a lot of people then kind of have that notion, but I find that like what really seems to work, like you're detoxing through your lifestyle, really at every turn. And I mean that as a compliment. Like the way that you eat is a detox, and you have a detox on your website, which I'd like you to talk about in just a moment, and how people could do that. But I was at the gym today and I was watching people working out, and I was just looking and I was like, most people are not even close to challenging themselves in terms of like what they're capable of doing and consequently, may struggle to make some of the physique changes that they're looking for. I think we almost need a little bit more healthy obsession and being like, look, I know it sounds cliche, but you got to kind of make this a lifestyle. This isn't like something that you just do for 5 days and then you go back to what you were doing and like everything's fixed. Like, it's like a loving kick in the ass. Like, you're daily toxifying yourself right now, and you've been doing it for decades.
And we all have the ability to detoxify, right? So we look at our homocysteine on a blood test, and that tells me if you're able to detoxify. Now, the problem is that if you're inflamed or if you have MTHFR, our homocysteine goes up. We're in the state of inflammation, and you're not able to detoxify. And if it gets high enough, then we worry about dementia and cardiovascular health, macular degeneration. So you always want to check that homocysteine on your blood test. So, and exercise is basically 20% of the equation, for weight loss at least. And it's great for other properties. I mean, inflammation and sleep and oxygenated the blood. And I mean, there's a million reasons why we should exercise. But what we eat really, 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 really matters. Sometimes if I go to Costco and I have time, I'll sit back and I'll watch people when they go to the free samples. And I've never once ever seen anybody ask the person what is in this food. Right. I've seen them try and sneak a second sample, but I've never seen them ask, what am I eating? We are not thinking about what goes into the building. And that is something I think we would be all benefit from. Like, let's read this label. People walk in my office all the time. I had a teenager in here the other day, and she's like, well, I have these chai lattes like every, couple of days, like maybe 3 or 4 days a week. She's 16. So I said, oh, I wonder how much sugar's in that. And she goes, oh, I don't know. I go, well, let's just look. So we looked it up. There's 42 grams of sugar that she's drinking just one time. And one drink in a day. That doesn't.
Does she also have anxiety?
Yeah, she does. Imagine that.
Yeah. So, caffeine's helping.
Yeah. So you've got to, if we're not aware, and what I would urge everybody to do is eat consciously, eat like your life is depending on it, because
so much of it's consciousness.
Yeah.
It's consciousness and like a burning desire and a willingness to try to do better than yourself the day before. And,
we eat very emotionally. We have a lot of emotions attached with food. So different than brushing your teeth, right? This is, what do I feel like? What sounds good? We celebrate with food. We punish with food, right? You can't, if you don't clean up your room, you can't have dessert. I mean, you get an A on that report card, I'll give you a scoop. There's always just something that we're doing to celebrate, or we have an emotion tied to food. And that's really wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. That's fuel for ourselves, right? So, and we don't need to be starving, and we don't need to, we have all these other outside voices, and I don't think social media has helped us very much. It certainly hasn't helped the kids. They have a lot of body dysmorphia, and it's really important to realize that food is fuel. Take your kids to the farm and have them pick some vegetables and have them come home and eat it and peel the carrots with you, so that they're invested in their food. They understand, instead of going to the ballet class or the dentist and they give you a lollipop.
And it's a recognition of that we only have so much bandwidth in a day. And people will be like, where's the time for that? Where's the time for that? It's like, show me how much time you spent on the TV. Show me your internet browser. You know what I mean? What you were doing on your phone, on the computer, on the television, that's time that you could be reconnecting with your food.
Yes.
And bringing more consciousness to these things. Can you tell us a little bit about your detox and where people could get involved with that?
Sure. So my detox is called Risa Groux Nutrition Detox, and it's a 14-day detox, and it's not about starvation. So you need to eat. If you're hungry, then eat. If you're not, then don't. Most people are not very hungry on it because you're getting so many good nutrients. But if you are hungry, I want you to eat, right? So you're having 2 shakes a day. And in those shakes are collagen protein, which as I mentioned, it's great for leaky gut. In addition, there are some amino acids and antioxidants that help open up pathways 1 and 2. So for the detoxification process. And then you're eating real food. You're eating fish, chicken, turkey. We're holding off on animal protein. On beef, because I don't know if you have the digestive enzymes in which to digest it. If I know that in my office, then I give you permission. or I give you digestive enzyme, and then good vegetables.
Smart.
Unlimited vegetables any way you want them, except for deep fried. We hold off on corn and peas and string beans, but sweet potato, yams, good fats. We cannot forget the fats. So eggs, nuts, seeds, olives, avocado, things like that. And we're taking out gluten.
So eggs are okay.
Eggs are okay.
All right.
Gluten, dairy, grains, sugar, alcohol, caffeine. Most people want to keep their coffee. So I say, if you do want to keep your coffee, it's your detox. You get to do it any way you want to. Just take out all the chemicals in it.
Yeah.
So we do, any kind of creamer that is coconut based or almond or hemp based. And instead of the sugar, you can use monk fruit or allulose or stevia. Yeah. But we just take out all those foreign chemicals, and it's amazing. I mean, I've been doing this for so long, and I'm always amazed at how the body responds. Just everybody just thrives from taking out, just eating real food.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I mean, heck, I might even do that. And I do like that you've got it, because a lot of people that have weight issues, there's that fat malabsorption problem, and they love red meat or pork and that sort of thing, and it just doesn't really jive with
break it down
with where they're at. We've talked about a good amount of supplements that have kind of mixed in, but I wanted to, if there are, like, what are your staple supplements for optimal health and performance? And I know that varies completely by the person, but if you were to say like your big 3 or your big 5 for, someone who's listening to this and may not be taking something that you think they need,
there's no way anybody I'm working with is not taking a vitamin D if they need it. And most people do. I work with professional athletes who are in the sun all the time. They are still low in vitamin D. Vitamin D is crazy good for everything. We have a D receptor site in every cell in the body, anti-cancer, anti-aging. We will not make bone without vitamin D. I don't care how much calcium you take or you eat. Vitamin B Ultra. My B Ultra is amazing. It's in methylcobalamin form, so it's easily absorbed. It's great for anxiety. It's great for RNA, DNA. When we're stressed, we eat all the B vitamins in our intestinal lining. And if you're vegan, you need to be replacing that vitamin B. You cannot get it you can get your folate, but not your B12 from plant sources.
A lot of vegans are low in iron too.
Yes. Yeah.
Not everyone. You got to test that. You need a blood test, because don't just go out taking iron, because that could be bad, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. So vitamin C helps you absorb some iron. So if you're vegan, I'm giving vegan vitamin C. The other ones, if you're autoimmune, I am absolutely going to quell that autoimmunity. And I have what I call my Fab 5. It is turmeric max, resveratrol with quercetin, glutathione. Glutathione's huge. I do not leave my house without glutathione. It's our master antioxidant, and it protects us from any oxidative stress. So anything that
you don't leave your house without it?
I do not that. My enzyme. Those are the two I always travel with. I haven't gotten COVID. I don't know, but it really protects me.
You take straight glutathione, or you do N-acetylcysteine?
I have glutathione with N-acetylcysteine. That's on my website that we sell in the office.
Nice.
Big fan of glutathione. So turmeric and omega-3 fatty acids. So my omega max, really good sourced, very clean, helps with inflammation, helps with cardiovascular, helps with eye health, helps with so many things. Those are really major for that. And then I have the enzymes is if you're 40 and above or 45 and above, and you're whether you're having symptoms or not, you have heartburn, you're getting some enzymes, right? Unless you have an ulcer. So those are the things that I highly recommend. I mean, there's a bunch of other things that I take, but those are really my top. And then I have my Thyroid. And if you have autoimmune, I'm going to give you the AI balance. I do a lot of blood sugar stuff. So berberine I take every day. Berberine is a natural herb that helps stabilize blood sugar. And I mean, I can keep going, but collagen is also a major part of my life.
I dig it. I love supplements. I've taken berberine for years. I just made the switch to metformin. Finally, I was kind of interested in it. I'm only a weekend. I tried it in like 2016 and actually didn't feel well. And then I was like, nah, I'm just going to stick with berberine. And, I don't know. I've seen a lot around metformin. That's kind of exciting. So
we need to talk.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm killing myself. So your Fab 5: turmeric, resveratrol, glutathione, your omega max, and then vitamin D.
Yeah.
That's your Fab 5. And now people that are dealing with like inflammation and pain related to autoimmunity? Will that knock it out?
Oh, for sure. It quells inflammation. That's what autoimmunity is, state of inflammation. Your cytokine production is high. You are just on the attack. Depends, where it lands, right? If it lands in your joints, it's fibromyalgia. If it lands in your, in your joints, it's rheumatoid arthritis, and, muscles, just fibromyalgia, and thyroid, Hashimoto's, things like that.
And everything that we've talked about, they can pick up at Risa Groux Nutrition.com, RASAGROUXNUTRITION.com. This has been a really fun conversation.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed myself. And
I love it. It's so knowledgeable. It's great.
No, this is, I think, we gave people like a masterclass in their thyroid and a whole bunch of other things. Anything else that you want to share with our audience, our listeners? You've got your book, Food Frame, that, guys, if you've got value from this interview, go pick up Food Frame on Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble or Risa Groux Nutrition.com. Anything else that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I have a thyroid class coming out in March. So it's called Achieving Optimal Thyroid Wellness or Achieving Optimal Thyroid Health. And it's every single thing you need to know about the thyroid, what tests to order, how to interpret those tests, stool tests, what could be drivers of thyroid issues. There is soup to nuts, everything you ever needed to know about thyroid. We have samples of things, foods to eat, foods not to eat. If you have a thyroidectomy, thyroid nodules, we cover everything you need to know. I'm super proud of that course. I feel super pumped that we're going to help a ton of people because so many people struggle with thyroid health.
I agree. And I think anyone listening to this who's like in their 40s, 50s, 60s plus, that's been struggling with weight and feels like, it's not due to a lack of discipline. They've tried a whole bunch of different diets. It might be good to get some blood work and look at your thyroid and go through your course and get this problem solved.
Yeah, we turn it around all the time. We turned around Hashimoto's last week with somebody I work with. We turn it around all the time, and the weight loss keeps coming. So, and people feel better. They thrive. It's awesome.
Beautiful. Well, guys, check out Risa Groux Nutrition.com. Risa, thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom and energy today with all of us. We appreciate you. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you.